Hey guys, I just wanted to show you how to hook up a very simple circuit with Arduino. This is kind of like the getting started circuit, the first thing you hook up when you're trying to learn how to run Arduino. So what I've got is my board and my breadboard. I've got a 560 ohm resistor, an LED, and a few wires here to hook up. So this first goal of this circuit is to get my LED blinking. I'm going to plug my LED in here somewhere on the breadboard. It doesn't really matter where. We just got to keep in mind that zoom in a little bit, that the rows of the breadboard are what matter. So these horizontal rows are what are connected. So this LED is plugged into this row here. Everything plugged into that same row will be plugged into the LED. And so typically with the circuit, we connect the long lead of the LED to the 5-volt pin on the Arduino. Now it's easy to get like these pins plugged into the wrong place, so be careful. The 5 volts, the third one up here, and I'm going to plug that in this row here. Now one thing I'm going to check and make sure with this LED is that I've got the long lead, and you'll see two of these wires are different lengths. One of them is longer than the other one. That one always points towards the high voltage. The short lead is the one that points down towards ground. Now we plug that back in. So the wire and the long lead are plugged into the same row, so they're connected to each other. The next thing I want to plug in is the resistor. And again, I'm going to make sure that the resistor is plugged into the same row as the other end of the LED. I'm just plugging it in somewhere else. And then I'm going to plug the black wire connected to the lead of the resistor back into one of these ground pins. There's 3 labeled ground pins on this board. Now that turns on my LED. My LED is connected directly to a high voltage source, that 5-volt pin. There's kind of a few details about the circuit. A lot of people ask me if the color of the wire matters. The color of the wire doesn't matter. Typically we reserve red wires to be connected to a high voltage source, and we typically use black wires to connect to a low voltage source, such as the ground. The ground is typically the lowest voltage in my circuit. Now this is a circuit. It does complete a closed path. Goes from the board, through the LED, through the resistor, back through the black wire to ground. So that is a closed circuit and allows electricity to flow through the LED. Now, Arduino is not just a matter of making things light up. It's figuring out how to control this light source. So what I'm going to do, instead of powering this through the high voltage line over here, I'm going to connect this to one of the digital input-output pins on my Arduino. I'm going to connect it to pin 13, and this will let me provide a digital signal to my LED. So a digital signal can either be high voltage or low voltage, and I can control that using a little bit of coding in the Arduino Ide. So let me pull that up here. So when you create a new program in Arduino, you get something that looks kind of like this. Best practices in writing programs for Arduino is to declare your variables up towards the top of the document. And so I'm going to create a variable. It's going to be an integer, an abbreviation for integers, int. I'm going to call this LED underscore pin. And I'm going to use this to store the number of the pin that I connect my LED to. So here I connected it to pin 13. And that way, everywhere I use this variable LED pin, I'm just going to just substitute in 13 for that variable name. This allows me to, if I got a bunch of complicated code down here and want to change this from pin 13 to pin 9, all I have to do is change this code in one spot. So let me switch this back to pin 13. Alright, every time you connect something to a digital input-output pin, you have to tell the computer whether you're going to use that as an output, as you're sending a signal to, say, an LED, or you're using that as an input. Say your pin's connected to some kind of sensor, like a button or a potentiometer or something like that. So I'm going to call pin mode. I want to set LED pin. Remember, that's going to be replaced by the number 13. I'm connected to this digital pin 13 over here. And I want to use this as an output because I'm trying to drive this LED with this digital pin. And now it's all set up to run my LED inside this loop. So the setup code gets run once at the beginning of my program. The loop function gets run continuously. And so to turn on this digital pin, I've got to call the digital write function. Again, I want to turn on pin 13. And the code for turning on pin 13 is use the keyword in all caps high. And so that'll send a high voltage signal to this LED pin. And if I want to make this thing blink, I need to leave it on for a certain period of time. And the trick for doing that is to put in what's called a delay. So this delay takes time in milliseconds. And so, for example, if I wanted to turn my LED on for 1 second, that would be 1,000 milliseconds. And so this would turn on for a whole second. Now, if I want to make this LED blink, I've got to also turn my pin off. So I want to do kind of the same thing. I'm going to access this digital, if I can spell, digital write function. I want to send a signal to the LED pin, but now I want to send a low voltage signal. And so a low voltage signal is going to be 0 volts. That should turn my LED off. So I'm going to put in a delay of 1,000. And so that's going to now turn my LED off for a second. So let me add a comment here. Remember, everything followed after these double dashes is what's called a comment. It's ignored by the computer program. It's just a place that I can leave myself notes if I want to come back to my program and figure out what I did at a later date. So I'm going to say turn off for 1 second. And so this is the basic link program. So before I can get this uploaded to my Arduino, I need to go up to Tools, go down to Port, and make sure I've selected my Arduino under the USB options here. There should only be one thing connected. I'm going to click the check mark to verify. Just going to go through my code and make sure everything's up to par. Let me call this call that Arduino test. I'm going to hit the upload button once that's compiled. Alright, still compiling. Well, this is exciting. Okay, there we are. Done compiling. I'm going to click upload. That's going to send the code to the Arduino. And I should have a blinking LED if everything's hooked up right. Which I do. Fantastic. Alright, enjoy.